Good morning, everybody, and welcome to your first panel of the day. You're here to meet some great speakers, and we're going to be talking about breaking into the M&E industries, but more importantly, it's really all creative industries, and also how to stay in the industry. If you guys are going to take any pictures or video capture and want to share it, please hashtag ArtStation HQ. That's totally cool because we love the community growing, and we love to retweet and share what you guys share. I just wanted to give a shout out because we're talking about obviously the creative community in Toronto and getting the support of some of our sponsors. This is ArtStation's first year at Fan Expo. In fact, it's the first event you've held in general, right, Leo?
Yeah, pretty much.
So this is a big day for Leo and ArtStation, so thanks for joining us. We have to thank our sponsors, some really good supporters that include Autodesk, Wacom, and Epson. Really great guys who also spend a lot of time on ArtStation. And I also wanted to give another shout out to the guys at Edge Control. We were here and visited their event. How many of you guys were at Edge Control? Okay, it was awesome, right? So, second year, they had 150 people all wanting to learn and be part of a local community. So whereas Leo is being able to fill in an international community, a community that now is a top 1,000 viewed web property worldwide, which is a huge feat. Congratulations, Leo.
Thanks.
But local is also important, seeing people face to face. So the guys at Edge Control did a great job, and I just want to give that shout out. Mm-hmm. So let's move on here. I wanted to introduce our panelists. We have Leo, who is the CEO of ArtStation. Nacho, who is a concept artist. You'll be familiar with some of his work in little things like Assassin's Creed, maybe Watch Dogs, Blacklist. Anyways, he's worked on a lot of projects. It's awesome to have him here today. Thomas Heermann. Thomas Heermann is a local here in Toronto. Isn't that right, Thomas?
Local for 20 years now, yes.
Yes, and he's actually a senior director at Autodesk. He's in the media and entertainment division, so extremely familiar not only with the emerging technology in the space, but with working with artists across the creative spectrum. And to round up the panelists, we have Tim. And Tim has worked on projects like Expanse, League of Legends, and not only is he an artist, but he's also an entrepreneur. He's co-founded Northfront. That's a studio here in Toronto. So really exciting to have this group. Welcome, guys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about myself now, just because why the hell am I paneling, this great group? So I actually have a creative background, and I've worked in companies such as Alias, Autodesk, The Foundry, and I've, interestingly enough, left the corporate industry to take what I've learned about creativity to really look at problems for other markets. So I've started my own business. I hire artists, I hire writers, and we live in a time where this is possible. So what I do is I tend to mix my life and business with the things that I really like, including art and design. And the interesting thing about this is it's not constrained just to the traditional studios anymore. For me, what I've found is everybody talks about this. What's innovation? So I get paid by people for innovation. And the funny thing about this, and that I'm realizing now, is you can't just help someone innovate without innovating yourself. So this panel really is a lot about innovating ourselves, seeing what's happening in the world and being able to adapt to that. So with that, I wanted to actually start off with Leo. You could skip these two. But yeah, so I wanted to start with Leo because, Leo, you really kind of brought us all here this weekend, and I think you have a special position, working in the industry. You get to see things on both sides. You get to see all the people in the community, and you also see all the studio, all of the directors, and everybody's hitting the site. So just first off and in general, what are you noticing that's really kind of happening in the space? What do you see?
Well, I mean, when is the industry not changing, right? Like it's constantly, it is constantly changing. Distribution models are changing. Business models are completely changing as well. And I think, from an artist standpoint, even on the production side of things, right, we're seeing a lot more emphasis on real-time content. I mean, there's VR now. When I say real-time, I mean like games and interactive. And so what we're seeing is that the whole industry seems to be galvanizing and moving towards that general direction now, where what we're seeing with like Autodesk has Stingray and Unreal and Unity. There's so much more emphasis on art being generated for real time. And that is creating very interesting new opportunities, I think, for the art industry and for the community in general. That's one of the major technological shifts that we're seeing right now, and it's happening. This is the year where people are moving towards doing everything in real time.
Are you surprised by the number of people who are now visiting the site? So beyond having now hundreds of thousands of actual members, people who are artists, are you surprised that you actually are getting traffic numbers in excess of 3 million?
Oh, you mean on ArtStation
Yes,
itself?
just in general, as a community.
Yeah, as a community, I think what's also happening is that we're seeing, in the past, like, art that was the art of movies wasn't or the art of games and stuff, like maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, now you can go down and you're walking the show floor, you can actually see, like, there are books, like all the conceptual art that was actually made for a game are actually being sold as products now, in their own right, as opposed to, so there's just a lot more interest, I guess, in the production and how these properties, how these games and movies and entertainment products are being put together. Yeah.
Do you think that this actually highlights the artists and creators in a way that allows them to actually become part of the product themselves, get the name out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting as well, because what we're seeing is because of that, the artists are getting a lot of the, a lot of credit. I think this is interesting because Tim, I think we were chatting about this earlier with, so Tim, company, Northfront, for 3-4 years now, you've been working with Riot Games.
Yes.
And what was funny is that the whole time, he never told me whose his big secret client was. and then one day they kind of put everything online and credited you guys, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we just assumed that it was a secret, so we hid.
And then
everybody would ask, what are you working on? We're like, some things.
And then one day, it just happened that they put all the content online and they credited Tim and Ryan and Northfront Studios, I guess, and so it just shows how companies are now, they're really being a lot more open about the kinds of about the production and how the art is being produced and by who.
It's a little bit like marketing has woken up.
Exactly.
That marketing knows that they can go on their own, or they can actually leverage people's passion. And then there's an amplification that happens. So the artists and their followers, in many cases, you guys have met a lot of the artists here. They have followers in many cases that are as large as some comic book titles. So who are you leveraging for the marketing? So this is where we see amazing things on ArtStation, where companies are actually looking to ArtStation to launch their products.
Yep.
Right? Not through just an ad, but through the artists that are on the site.
Exactly.
So a lot of incredible things are happening. I mean, you must feel that too, Nacho, right? Like being a member of ArtStation and all the people that are following you.
No, it's insane, the amount of good artists that you can find right now. So it's like a source of inspiration in both sides, like for the industry and also for the users as well. So it's like a back and forth of inspiration. On my daily work as well, I used to check ArtStation usually, and it's like my daily dose of inspiration every day.
Yeah, I hear a lot of the guys actually have like another monitor up, and it just
Yeah.
has ArtStation up on the side.
Yeah, that happens. It's a perfect way to start your collection of inspiration and check what's going on in the market. Because also as an artist, you also need to check how are yourself in the market. And you, as you say, like this industry is growing so fast. Even, I mean, if you check concept art done 10 years ago, and the concept art that you can see right now, it's totally different. It's insane. So you also need to see if you're still in the market.
What do you see as some of the challenges for artists, Leo? Especially because you have so many. You kind of have insight to a few 100,000 people who are either hobbyists trying to get in the industry or pros.
Yeah, I mean, this is, so I'm going to say some controversial things.
Do it, do it.
So, I mean, like one of the most common ones is I travel a lot, I meet a lot of aspiring artists, and I hear a lot of the line, I want to be a concept artist. How many of you here want to be a concept artist?
I do.
Right? Yeah. Everybody. And the thing about it is that they say, oh, I want to be a concept artist, but what they actually mean is, I want to draw.
Yeah.
And get paid for it.
Yeah, and get paid for it, and because conceptual art, visual development it's a very specific skill set. It's different from illustration. It's different from highly polished fan art, that you see here at Fan Expo. So Viz Dev is really its own thing, and instead I think how to overcome the challenge of getting into the industry. I mean, everybody wants to be a concept artist, but the truth is there are so many. The industry is so broad. There are so many ways to be a creative working in the industry and be involved, and so I think what I always recommend to artists who want to break into the industry is to see yourself as a professional and to see yourself as a business person in the industry, and that changes your perspective on everything because you start to realize how important it is to market yourself, as an individual, and as your own personal brand, being able to make connections with other artists or art directors in the industry. That will justify you going to all kinds of industry events worldwide, and also putting yourself in the business mindset of okay, where do I fit as a skilled professional in the industry, and figuring out what's your thing. I mean, is your thing? Are you going to be like, say, the mech guy, the spaceship's vehicle guy, or the character, the fantasy character girl? You figure out what it is. What's your thing, and also what's supply and demand in the industry? Because I remember 2 years ago, I was at THU, and literally, there was 700 people there. I would say 90% of them wanted to be concept artists, and there was a hiring manager from Riot Games, and it's just like, I need technical artists. If you can make real-time visual effects in a game, I will hire you right now. You don't even have to be that good.
Yeah, animators as well. VFX animation.
Exactly, VFX animation in real time, So yeah, being able to, that's why going out there, talking to the art directors, talking to the hiring manager, figuring out what's supply and demand, what's the needs in the industry, and you'll find that actually getting your foot in the industry, that there are some avenues where you can get in, where you where there just isn't a huge supply of talent in that area, and if you can just specialize and get really good at that, it's very easy to get in. Yeah.
This is a really good point to actually transition to Nacho, because I was about to say that one of the things that I notice is a lot of artists come up to me and they apologize that they're not a pro yet, or I'm not a real artist yet. And I think what's really interesting is what Leo is saying. You're actually a part of it. If you're interested in the industry, you could be part of it even if you're only starting. Knowing people, I know a lot of students and I watch them evolve. You never treat them like a student. I treat them like I look at their work. And sometimes there's a perfect job for them I'm not talking about just interning. It's like, I need this piece and this guy can do it. So one piece of advice that's related to that, and that's why I want to switch over, is because you didn't start off as a concept artist, right?
And I started like 13 years ago. So again, everything was so different. I was a fine art student. I never finished my career as well. And I also was working as a website developer, local developer, and designer. And I remember that the first time that I had a chance to work for a company in Spain, in Mallorca, that is a little island. It was just for fun. I had no idea about. A friend told me, you like to draw, you like video games, so why not to try to apply to this company? And it was like I did it because of fun. I didn't know that I would even get that job. And the worst part is, like, when I started to prepare my portfolio, I didn't even know what should I have to show. So I was like, I don't even know that Google was a thing yet. I remember, I searched software online, concept art, and the first thing was like a framing company called Concept Art. So imagine how far this industry has gone. Before it was like maybe Craig Mullins was a thing, Star Wars concept arts were a thing, but apart of that, there was nothing. I think after Uncharted is when concept art industry kind of changed a little bit on that. So for me, that was the first time that I had to decide, okay, what do I do? Because I had to finish my fine art career in Germany because I got a scholarship. I don't know why Germany. And then, or either going to work in a video game company in Spain. It's like, okay, I'm gonna try, because I think it's very hard to get in the industry. For me, the most important thing is, like, once you get inside, things are easy. But getting in the industry is very hard. Now it's easier because you can do a lot of freelance, whatever. Before, that wasn't a choice. I mean, you had to go to a studio.
You were either in or out.
Yeah, exactly. And also starting a very small studio, because the industry in Spain, even now, is bigger, but before it was almost nothing. So there were like maybe 2 studios there. It's like, okay, I had the chance, I'm gonna jump into that. And my path was like as I said before, my path was like little by little. I went to a small company, then I moved to a little bigger company, then I jumped into Ubisoft, and in Ubisoft I went from Ubisoft Barcelona, then Ubisoft Bulgaria, then Ubisoft Toronto. So I was like kind of like this kind of tale of the ant, like gaining experience little by little, and when I was feeling comfortable, trying to do the jump again to a bigger studio. I always have my goals were very clear. I wanted to work in AAA games, and honestly, Assassin's Creed was one of my goals in my career. I wanted to work in big games like that, and the only chance that I had, it was like moving to another country for sure, because in Spain I couldn't make it.
Well, we're glad you came.
I'm glad again as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's like it's a different story. Right now, I think it's way easier. I think you guys are in the golden age of concept art right now. There's a lot of demand, but there's also a lot of competition as well. But you can work for Riot in your house if you want. I mean, you can do a lot of freelance. You can contact with any kind of artists in the industry, and I mean, there's a big community now, and everyone is very. I think it's a very healthy community. I think everyone is like talking to you like normal. It's not like there's no gap between the artist and the fan right now. I think everyone speaks that same language, and I wish I had this opportunity to check Twitch or do live streams with artists, Google Hangouts, YouTube. I had nothing. I had to learn I didn't even know English back at the time, so I had to learn with a couple of Spanish tutorials that I found from Photoshop. So yeah, everything has changed so much.
How do you guys feel about the mix of kind of freelance and the people who are full-time contract at studios? Even from your perspective, both of you, Tim and Nacho, like this aspect that I have jobs where I actually have freelancers who are, actually working on titles with the big companies. So they're out there as freelance, but they're also full-timers. And then you have a whole audience of dedicated full-time, talent out there. Do you see an interesting mix of that on ArtStation, Leo?
Freelance versus...
freelance versus in-house guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a healthy amount of freelance going around. I think for us, in terms of ArtStation itself, we have the world's largest job board for art. We have hundreds of jobs on there from all the major studios. But most of those jobs being advertised are full-time positions. But just because it's different, like for freelance, people will just they'll just find an artist on the site and contact them
Directly,
as
yep.
opposed to just posting a full-time position where they want applications and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think it's I couldn't give you the statistics, but it's when you look at just the amount of hiring activity out there, though, it's pretty healthy.
It's true. You wouldn't see all the times I've poked and messaged an individual artist
Right.
because I love their stuff, and then I have a job for them.
Yeah. So actually, Chris, you mentioned that I think it was for Meta Olympia, right? Like you posted that was one of your
awesome.
things. You posted a job, a freelance job on ArtStation. How many?
So
applicants did you get?
I bought an ad. It was like $150. And I was starting the concept of an idea that I started documenting. And I just threw it out there. It was before GDC. And I saw Leo the next day, and I checked the amount of inbound mails I had. I had 1,700. Yeah, that's too much. That's too much. No, but what's awesome about it was, and I was really surprised because I told Leo that a lot of the stuff was amazing work. And it was amazing work that was across the spectrum. Some were students. Some were guys that were just saying, hey, you're doing a sci-fi property, a sci-fi sport property. That sounds interesting. I've been working on, the fantasy for this one title for 12 years. Can I work on some sci-fi? And guys were coming on saying they would even have maybe 3 or 4 hours free a week, and they were interested in doing stuff. So, yeah, it's really interesting. I'm a small startup entrepreneur guy. I'm doing some ideas, but I have access now to people who worked on Star Wars, some guys who are ex-Pixar, as well as talent that costs a lot less that are actually hungry. They're cranking out good stuff where some people are just calling in, I'll give you a drawing, $1,500. It's like, wow, that's really economical, 8 lines. Thanks, man. So yeah, it's a really interesting board, and you find as an artist where you fit in, whether you're new or whether you're senior.
But Chris, I want to maybe add a different perspective to that. So of course, it's great for the artists to try out different things, but also talking to all the companies I've dealt with in the past, automotive, product design, they're really looking into non-genre artists as well. Like they have enough automotive designers doing design day over day over day, but often they want to get the inspiration from how somebody in fashion or some other area would inspire what they do and see a different perspective as well. So I think it's important to really lock down and ground yourself as an artist. Be flexible and experiment is super interesting. It's super interesting for you to see different things, but also for companies looking for an artist as well. How can manga apply to fashion in automotive or other things too? So don't see these guys looking for automotive designers in automotive. They're looking for artists with ideas and being creative, not just for another automotive designer. Of course, they have plenty of them on staff. They often look for different things. And technology, genres, ideas are blurring. Gaming and automotive, product design and fashion. These are things that are so convoluted now together, which is a great opportunity for really your own unique style and bring your ideas and talents to life.
I think, Leo, you have a story that really supports that. Didn't you get a weird job posting, or maybe the first automotive posting on ArtStation?
Oh yeah, I mean we've had companies like Tesla, post the jobs on ArtStation looking for artists to
come up with ideas.
yeah,
right?
to work on Tesla.
Like that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and to Thomas's point, I mean, I know of an artist based in LA, very famous concept designer named Vitaly Bugarov, and he's an incredible mech designer. And so you see all the really awesome robots and stuff like that. But now this is anecdotal. It came from a friend, but he got an offer for a job that he couldn't refuse. It was more money than he had ever made in the entertainment industry, designing surgical instruments.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I saw some of the surgical instruments, like these robotic surgical instruments, and they were the best looking robotic surgical instrument I'd ever seen, but they were scary looking as well.
A little H.R. Geigery, maybe. Nacho, one last thing for you, which I think is really important for everybody. What are the things that you wish you were able to tell yourself with what you know now about your career, the industry, and all that time that you're kind of struggling to learn stuff? What are the top things? What are the top searches that you tell yourself to look for?
I gave a 1 hour and a half talk the other day talking about it, so I could
You have to boil it down.
talk the whole day. It's hard. Well, the first thing I think for me the main important is learn that what is a concept artist, because no one knows what is a concept artist. So we are always seeing these amazing full finished paintings, but we are problem solvers, and we need to help, or either the art director, level artist, or even, whoever. We need to help them to solve their problems. The problems that they have can be artistic problem, can be a level design problem. So a lot of time we do a lot of production work. We don't just do the full finished pieces. We can show all the stuff, mostly because they don't even allow us to show it, and because it's pretty boring to show it, but there's a lot of boring production work. There's a lot of back and forth and talk to the art directors and do tests and a lot of quick sketches. So don't forget that. If you want to get into the industry, you need to learn about designing stuff. I've seen every day amazing pieces, but if you check the perspective or the scale of things, there's no. If you give that to a 3D artist, they can't do anything with that. It's just very good looking, but that's nothing that is going to solve any problem that other artists have. So the main thing is try to, if you work in your own stuff, if you want to get in the industry, set maybe a personal project and put a lot of thought into things. Think the why, the who, and the where, and think why this thing is here and is not there, and think why are you picking this material. And if you start thinking about all the story behind it can be a prop, it can be a character, it can be whatever. You need to think about the story, you need to think about your choices. Why are you choosing this kind of material? Why are you choosing this kind of architecture? If it's going to work or not? Because at least in video games, this is very, very important. You need to be very careful with what you put in the screen. So yeah, first, don't show just the beautiful thing. If you show more stuff in your portfolio, real production stuff, I think it's very, very good. And well, I could talk a lot about that,
but that's a really good point, man.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important. I think I'm very tired to see portfolios that they don't tell you anything. Second one, talking about is think out of the box. Everything, and you can see in ArtStation. Sometimes you look for spaceships, and it's okay, it looks like the same. It looks like it belongs from the same person. So it's very hard, and nowadays we are all constantly bombed with amazing stuff and amazing art. Even for me, sometimes I try to do something original, and then people shows me another painting that someone did 2 months ago. How the hell? Because I saw it somewhere, and it gets in your brain, whatever. But try to look for other sources. ArtStation is amazing, but also try to look in movies, read a little bit, check classic art. That is, I think, is the base for art. You need to check all this stuff. Check the real sources as well. Get always a sketchbook with a notebook with you. Note some ideas that you can have as well. Try to always there's always another way to think about topics. So try to the topics can be the same, but the execution and the way of thinking about the idea can be very different. And try to keep fresh. It's very hard, but I think that's a good.
Think of the who, think of the what, think of the why. Those are actually product management questions. Yeah. So Thomas, you might want to hire Nacho before he goes back to Barcelona.
Maybe you should, yeah.
But it is. I think that you have to look at your work as not only a problem solving, but you're communicating that solution. And that's a very business approach. You're doing a pretty drawing, and if no one can get it, or you can't pitch it, that's a big problem. And if you guys have seen those great pitches from the Disney guys and stuff, those guys are selling you. They're sales guys at that moment. So I think that's a really, really great point. Thomas, you brought up something that was really interesting because it segues from what Nacho was saying, as well as the whole aspect of artists being able to not only kind of mix their roles, but they're in demand from different industries. So I wanted to bump this up to your more corporate self. From an Autodesk perspective, tear off to get the suit. You have the suit underneath, right? What's happening there that, from a technology perspective, of how Autodesk is looking at solving these broader creativity problems, right? Because it's so many industries, right? From building to engineering to media and entertainment to art, right? So what's that perspective looking like from technology? What's important in tech right now?
I want to start differently a little bit. So if you look at right now, there's artists and there's technology. And there are a lot of artists out there who are dismissing technology. I don't need technology. I have my pen and my paper, and I can get every idea out what I can. But even if you look back in history, art and technology always has inspired each other. Technology has enabled artists to do more things. Look back, classic example is the Renaissance with the invention of perspective. Things look far more 3D now if you start stretching today. So it's not about an either or, I think. It's really the and it's not about technology there for technology purposes. And if you look back the last 15 years, it's like, okay, there's the high-end Cintiqs, the $50,000 solutions for drawing and sketching, and you have to learn it for 3 weeks to even get a stroke on the screen.
Dude, we worked on those. Go easy on it.
Yeah. But now look at things like the iPad Pros, the new Surface Book. Suddenly, technology is enabling far more artists without this huge learning curve of technology to really get their ideas from their heads onto something that they can tell a story. And I would agree, because it's not about the one image that looks awesome. Of course, that's super important. But it's always a story. It's always the pitch. You're always pitching to your boss, to your peers. There's always something behind just the visual what you have on screen. And from a technology perspective, we have to enable the artists in doing that. And it doesn't mean more features, more UI, more technology. It's almost the opposite. Let's take away the complicated things and let the artist be really the artist. Like the best digital canvas is a canvas there's only you and your pen. All the UI is hidden and you start drawing, you can imagine. Because this allows the artists who don't want to learn, cannot learn like complicated software products to really get their ideas out. Like I want to be an artist, I have this idea in my head, but I can't articulate this in 3D because I have to learn a 3D package for like a year or 2 years. And it takes me 10 years to be proficient. That should not be the case anymore. And we have seen a lot of trends here now with the iPad going out. Like, can you imagine like iPad is like 7 years old now? And remember the iPhone Touch going out 10 years ago? Like, who would ever draw on a phone? Huh? Now, actually, it's enabling far more artists to be creative every day. It enables people who would never think about being creative, articulating something. And the most important is sharing it, because then the world can see it and it can be discovered as well.
Thomas, I remember when you had a couple of art galleries in San Francisco where we put up art from anybody who submitted from a creation on the phone or from an iPad. And it was a mix of people who are professionals as well as people who are just submitting it, like hobbyists, you know. The age groups were all over the place, and when we had like, you know, creative directors from Marvel and stuff going through the gallery, they were picking some of their favorite pieces, and they were like, you know, an 88-year-old woman from North Carolina. They were picking out pieces that, you know, it's not that you couldn't tell who was a professional, but I'm talking about the substance, right? The things that touch people emotionally. So that's what that really happened. That was a bit of a revolution, that suddenly people could draw digitally and just email it on the spot, and all of a sudden you were able to feature it in galleries so that's a perfect example of that.
It's a super good example. It, of course, increases the competition, unfortunately, for the artists. However, it enables far more people to do something, including you. It's not about anymore how to be the best operator of a software. It's how to be the best artist using a software. That makes a big difference for a lot of people more than before.
Yeah. That's actually a great example, you know, Autodesk related. A few years ago, Autodesk released a package called Fusion 360. You know, and Fusion is, you know, from Autodesk standpoint, and it was very much supposed to be a CAD tool.
Yeah.
You know, supposed to be the next generation of CAD. And what I guess surprised everybody was how many people in the media and entertainment industry started using it.
I saw a lot of Iron Man models coming out of that
a lot of people in
package.
the entertainment industry started using it, and the crossover there is interesting because, you know, in the entertainment industry, in the games industry, 3D for film, etc. Usually it was always okay. We want to make these meshes so that it looks good on screen, or it works well in the game engine. But now they were designing stuff free form in an actual CAD package, and so literally this design that they've made, this problem that they've solved, this incredible mech that they've designed, can be manufactured now.
Totally.
It can actually, you know, be a thing that is fabricated, and that's when you start to see these really interesting crossovers, and how as professionals working in the industry, you know, you're not just somebody making pretty pictures. You're solving problems.
Yeah.
You're
But
creating solutions. Yeah.
definitely, but also going back to, so Fusion is, we call it the CAD package. But also, the approach of Fusion is similar to what we do with Sketchbook is, we take the UI away from you guys. So you can focus on being creativity, and I've seen enough guns and swords made in Fusion as well. But it only is available that designers don't have to become CAD operators for years. They can pick it up and figure it out pretty much on the go, and suddenly you are enabling far more things.
I was going to ask you, Thomas, the question of like, not exclusive to Autodesk, what's the coolest tech that you think is happening right now? But let me almost pre-answer in the sense that it sounds like a lot of the things that you're talking about is really the UX. That you think that the cool part about technology is that people can actually use it.
You're right. Of course, there's mobile. There's now VR, of course, super cool. Who's playing with VR here? Who is creating in VR? Only one person. No, but shows back to the idea, like looking at things is easy in VR, but having a UI that allows you to be creative in VR. Imagine you have like a UI that to be in this immersive space, you have to click through with your thing and find it out. Like you're going to be at lost very quickly. So the experience is the most important one. So I fully agree with you. And it can be VR.
Dude, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, you agree with me. But it's really, it makes the experience easy, not hard. That makes the biggest difference, John.
I just wanted to take a quick shift over and talk a little bit more about that kind of blend that Nacho brought up about businesses and creativity. And I wanted to actually ask Tim, because Tim is like obviously an awesome artist, but you know he and Ryan Denning have chosen to make Northfront. So that's I mean, awesome work. But what's that like? What's that balance between being creative and running your business?
Well, we started off really as two freelancers, so the business side of it has kind of creeped in over time, and we didn't really start with a plan. It was really about we'd both worked at a lot of different companies, and me more on the visual effects side and him in games. And we really wanted to start a company that we both wanted to work at. And we wanted to be in an environment where we could collaborate and learn from each other and be a little bit more in control of our destiny in terms of the kinds of projects that we worked on. And the two of us are kind of at a similar stage in life. We both have families. We each have 3 kids. And so all of those things kind of factored into, you know, what do we want to do for the next, you know, this next phase of our careers. And as initially we started off working independently, sharing office space. So I was doing more matte painting at the time, and he was doing a collection of things. And we would have lunch together, and that was the extent of it.
That was the partnership lunch.
And then over the first year, where we were working on all these different collections of things, the first thing where we landed on that was really collaboration between the two of us was getting the first season of The Expanse. And things changed very quickly from there, and it started to feel more like a company. I think in the first 2 years, we hired our first employee. And you learn as you go along. You kind of figure out what that means and the implications of that. And whereas prior to that, I worked at home a lot. Now all of a sudden there's somebody to manage, and what does that mean? And both of us had managed people in other companies before, so it wasn't totally foreign. Now we're 4 people, and everything we do is collaborative. Most of the work that goes through our studio now will have more than one person touching it. And it's from a business side. I mean, you learn about accounting and legal and all that kind of. None of it is my skill set or Ryan's. So some of the best advice that was given to us early on was, you know, figure out the things that you're really good at and do those things, and pay someone to do the things that you're not good at, because you could easily dump tons and tons of time into things that you shouldn't be doing, and it doesn't financially make sense because your time has a value on it. So yeah, as much as you can, be honest with yourself about where your strengths are and play to those.
What I noticed as as a small business operator is how much access we have now. So it's not just going onto ArtStation and having access to getting artistic talent, but I don't crowdsource my accountant, but I actually have access to people and skill sets that it's really a waste of my time to do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I find that you can bring professionals into your life to cover some really tough challenges that you would be YouTubing for weeks to become an expert at.
Sure.
So as a fellow kind of small business operator, I think it's a really great time too. I know a lot of young guys that have skipped going to a studio to try to start their own business. Not that it's easy, but they can.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of find yourself, like if something comes up to do with immigration or legal things, and you spend 10 minutes looking on the internet trying to find it, and you're like, why am I doing it? Just because I want to avoid paying $100 to my lawyer. And I've just dumped
and that
3
$100,
hours
I know. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So it's what you expected then? I mean, it's evolved organically, but now that you guys are in it, is it what you've expected in terms of the client, and especially that client relationships, the stuff that you have?
I don't think either of us came in with any idea of where it would go. We feel extremely fortunate with the clients that we have. We try to really focus on building strong relationships with a small number of clients and encourage ongoing business rather than doing a lot of one-off jobs. So we try to be really brave about saying no to work, because you could easily become completely overwhelmed and drive yourself into burnout by taking on too much and compromise the client work that you have. So we focus on dealing really with 2 clients, 3 max at once, and just doing really high quality work for them. But it's changing all the time. I mean, we're always kind of surprised at where things go. We still don't really have like a grand plan of where we see it headed, but we want to stay small. We don't work with freelancers unless it's something. I mean, occasionally we'll hire like a writer or something like that, but you can increase your bandwidth, take on more work, hire outsourcers to do that work, but then you shift. For Ryan and I, it becomes about managing, and we're both artists and want to be doing art, not managing art. And we also are really conscious of the fact that we want to develop a studio where there's relationships between everyone and we're learning from each other, and you don't have access to that as much if you're working with somebody remotely. You can't just look over your shoulder and, hey, what are you doing there? They're, like feeding off of each other and encouraging each other to grow. So that's really where we want to stay, I think, to try to be in that kind of 4 to 6 guy area.
It's excellent. It's amazing. The stuff you guys are doing are amazing. We've been showing that up on the screen there. It's incredible work.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And when we look at what we do, we're like, oh my goodness, like we do spaceships and robots and castles all day long. Like, you have to kind of catch yourself when you complain about your work or you're feeling, oh, I'm not motivated. Like, good grief, there's 1,000 kids on ArtStation that would take my job today. So.
But anyway, as you say, when you work for different clients, you need to learn also to value your work, and to people have to pay a real fair money for what are you doing. I don't know if you have like a say on that, but I feel here that a lot of people that are starting are undervaluing themselves, and they are harming themselves, they are harming the industry. So I think it's always very good to think that if people are hiring you, it's because they really want you. And of course, there's going to be more people that is cheaper, but probably they're going to be worse than you. So also you need to to believe in yourself, in your skills, and put a fair price on what are you doing.
Yeah.
I'm working in a studio, so I don't have I'm not the best one talking about it, but I think it's very important.
Yeah, and we try to really offer a narrow, we basically focus on design. I mean, we do highly rendered pieces, but our clients are primarily coming to us because we're solving design problems for them, and so we're not just doing illustration, and that we've seen, particularly in the city, like we do a fair amount of TV work, and it's really valuable to our clients if we can solve those problems for them, then they're happy and they love working with us.
So I'm going to actually run through the panel with just a couple of last questions, just get your thoughts on it. So just to recap the kind of top 2 bullets that we started with. So starting with you, Nacho, what would be the top piece of advice that you'd give to new artists that want to get into one of the M&E or creative industries today?
Well, first, it's hard. It's true. I don't think it's easy to get in the industry. At least in the studio, I'm talking about my perspective. We really usually look for experienced people. That's the reality. But at the same time, at least for example in Ubisoft Toronto, we are hiring a lot of newcomers, a lot of people that are coming from the school, or we also do it's called Next. It's like a contest every year. Sometimes it's 2D, sometimes 3D. But we hire mostly all those people that they are coming to that contest. So I think here you can find a very, very healthy industry where you can start, of course. But also, don't be feared. You can't stay at home crying because you're not getting a job. Sometimes you need to do the jump, make the jump, maybe travel. I had to go to Bulgaria. I don't even know why the hell I did Bulgaria. But I was pursuing a very clear goal that, of course, it was hard to achieve, but it wasn't impossible. So I always had a very, very clear goal where I wanted to go, and I did all the steps. I learned English. I moved to very weird, crazy countries, and then I came here. So don't wait for luck to come to you. You need to really, really push. And honestly, again, nowadays there are so many ways to get into the industry. Going to the studio, working as freelance, try to make a lot of contacts. I think network is very important, and the more people you know, the easier it's going to get for you to find a job or to have colleagues that are going to be working in the industry. So once you meet the right people, it's also easier to get in the industry. But also, try to think about what do you want to do. And if you want to be an illustrator, perfect. But if you want to be a concept artist, think about it. You really need to think that you have to do production stuff and try to solve problems. I think it's a very important thing.
Leo, same question.
So I think the biggest advice I always give people is to think of yourself as a micro business, and that forces you to think professionally and to be strategic and to be intentional about your career and how you're going to tackle where you're headed in the industry. Same thing, and providing solutions and you're basically a solutions provider to whichever company that you work for or clients. Yeah.
Thomas.
I would say experiment and be curious. Mm-hmm. Technology allows you now to do things in a completely different way. And I really encourage you guys, don't adopt it, but play with it. See how this can change what you do. See how you can adopt certain styles differently. And maybe just you can evolve in a different way and bring yourself to another level on your art or your ideas. And maybe sometimes there could be something cool coming out of it as well. And really experiment with it. And often merge and mix. If you look at paper, there's oil painting and watercolor. And it's getting it together on paper is super hard, but digitally, who cares? You can have so many mix-ups and mash-ups. Play with it, guys, really, it's honestly. And it's available now. It's free. It's on the app stores. Just go for it.
Tim.
Yeah, I'd say the design side of things is a really important thing to focus on, specifically showing that you can think and come up with different ideas. Pay attention to, when you're looking at books about games or, different art books for properties, and really looking at some of them will show the different stages of the design process and the rough sketches, and try to have that stuff. We see a lot of people showing us finished pieces, and we're always kind of looking at it going, well, where did this come from? Did they design that vehicle, or is that something they got somewhere? What's this based on? So we'll always have to ask, do you have sketches? Because we really need to know that you can think and develop ideas. And the other thing I think is just really important is just working on building relationships. There's so many opportunities now to connect with people. I feel like probably the greatest skill that I developed early on was stalking people in companies on LinkedIn, and you find the different heads of departments or whatever, and Try to find ways of communicating with them. You know, you compliment them on their art, ask them questions. And a lot of people are really open with that stuff. And over time, those become your pathway into companies. There were relationships that I started with people that worked at like ILM years before I ever had a hope of working there. But they become somebody that's familiar, that when you are coming around and you are trying to get in, you're not just sending a letter to HR that gets put in the trash bin.
With 8,000 other letters.
Yeah, like to me, like getting a job through HR, I tell people don't even bother. Like you've got to meet people, you've got to go to things like this, you've got to talk to people and start making, you know, your name and your work present in their mind, because eventually it's a persistence game. You know, it took me it probably took me about 4 or 5 years to get into ILM, and I applied so many times, and you just can't give up, and you just keep on working at getting better, and eventually it's going to happen. There's so much need for artists out there. Like, just the scale of productions is enormous. There's so much getting made, and, you know, everything is like 4K, VR, like, it's insane, and there aren't enough people to do it all. People are always looking for artists. So you just got to hang in there and keep at it.
Can I say one thing? Of course you can. Continue what Tim said about technology and all that stuff. That I said it before, but never forget the foundation. Never forget that we are artists. The core of our job is being an artist. So sometimes I see a lot of times about like doing like a lot of photo bash or 3D, whatever. I see sometimes that people are not even putting any thought on anything. They get a photo of a car because it matches with a light or whatever, and they put it there, and that's all. And sometimes, coming back to what I was saying, like about design, think why are you putting stuff? Not because it just looks good. Or other people are doing a render and then overpainting, but maybe you can add another light anywhere, even if it's not realistic. Maybe for your purposes can be better. So sometimes don't let the tool drive your artistic decisions. I think it's very important to have in mind that you really need to design and you really need to think. Don't let any software or any technique that you are using drive what are you doing. So be always very aware about it.
I was going to ask what you guys thought to tell veterans, but the reality is this covers it. It doesn't change. When you're a pro or whether you're a junior, it's like you still got to network. You still got to think. And I think you guys covered that really well. We'll wrap up here. And thank you very much. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.